it's good to see faces while you talk. Okay, thank you so much. I think last year we had this opportunity to perform live. And Lakshmi, that still remains, I think, one of our live performances. We had Revati performing Vellai Mori, where I think the play generated a lot of discussion, and I think Lakshmi thought of this topic now, and I'm not sure whether I'm really an expert in that, but I'm just going to kind of put together the things that I know. And there are a lot of gaps, which I think we need to really unearth. We also need to kind of bring in various histories of different regions, which is why you have Tamil Nadu and Chennai, because I don't think Chennai alone could have done that, especially for the queer histories, because most of the queer histories get formed in the soil that you plant yourself in. You know, I mean, very rarely do we get the natural, wherever you're born, wherever you're native, never really allows you to stay that way. So we are really talking about transplantation that happens within the queer community. So before I really I'm not going to go into definition, and I don't want to make it an academic session, but I just want to kind of give you my understanding of queer, so that, you know, the spectrum is really large, and I'm willing to take any questions and discussions based on that. And like Lakshmi said, my entry point has been theatre, so I am going to share a little bit of that, but I don't want to share too much of it. But those of you who are familiar, because there are already things written about it, or you have seen a performance and you want to really share some view, please do. So, okay. I hope, is it visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Yeah. So what I'm just kind of keeping to that definition that came into vogue, if I can say that, within the academia, that what queer does is to really question whatever we assume to be normal, the legitimate, and very often the things that are considered legitimate and normal are the dominant ones. So that is the, I think, first thing that we need to really bear in mind, you know, and before we really go into any discussions. So in the process of talking queer, what we are doing is also to undo hierarchies and social inequalities in terms of class, caste, gender, of course, the foremost, and sexuality. So, I mean, my entry point into this queer ideas of queer, or the concept of queering, is through feminism. So for me, it is about understanding gender itself. And from a feminist point of view, if you think of patriarchy as the bedrock of the system that is really creating these inequalities, we have what is holding it is heteronormativity. So between the two of them, the two major pillars, if I may say, which really keeps this so-called normal systems, it would be patriarchy and heteronormativity. And you will see that running through everything that we are going to be talking about, all these things. Now, one of the things that we can ask ourselves is, what do we really want from talking queer? And I think the simplest of answers would be, I mean, we need to break it into various categories, but the simplest and the most difficult to define and variable at different points would be dignity of all beings. And that dignity includes socioeconomic, educational, medical, familial, relationship-based, everything. So this is a very, very, very broad kind of category. And one of the thinkers within India who I think is somebody who has addressed this would be Nivedita Menon. So those of you who want to really continue your studies on that, most of what Nivedita Menon writes really talks about the subversions that are possible the moment you, I mean, one of her famous book is Seeing Like a Feminist. So I think she really kind of shifts our gaze and therefore our attitude and our understanding. Now we'll come to Tamil Nadu, and I think one of the things that we are all familiar with, and we all begin discussion about the queer community, would be from the stories of Aravan. Now, as early as in 1906, we had this Britisher official, W. Francis, who is supposed to have kept his notes on South Arcot. So he maintains a South Arcot manual, which is now available in British Museum and other archival sources. And I took this from Alf Kilterbeitel's book on Cult of Draupadi. And Kilterbeitel, who is one of our researchers based on the Cult of Draupadi, has 4 books centering around this region, especially the northern Tamil Nadu, and he focuses on Draupadi cult and Aravan. And I think you cannot talk about Aravan without talking about the Draupadi cult. So, which is something very, very unique to Tamil Nadu. We have temples for Draupadi. We have this annual Kuthu festivals done for Draupadi festival and everything. And we have, I mean, the picture is from Kuvagam, but you do have many temples in and around northern and south Arcot, which will include anywhere from Viluppuram to Chennai, Pondicherry, Dindivanam, Kadalur, all these belts have temples for Aravan. You either call it Aravan temple or you call it Kuthandavar. Kuthandavar is the name that is very, very prevalent among the villages. Now, this particular myth, as all of us know, Aravan is the child of Arjun and Ulupi, the Naga princess, Naga queen, and he is supposed to be the perfection of masculinity. And the Mupatrendu Purusha Lakshana, we call it the Purusha Lakshanas that are described in various treatises, right from Kama Sutra to Natya Shastra to medical treatises that we have. Aravan is supposed to be an embodiment of all those Lakshanas. And they needed somebody, and the only other person was Krishna. And as you know, Krishna is very clever, so he didn't want to be a sacrifice, and he was the key figure to get the Mahabharata war going. This is not Krishna bashing. I'm willing to answer your questions. So this Aravan is chosen as somebody who would be the sacrifice. That is the myth behind it. But those of you who are familiar with the northern parts of Tamil Nadu, this Aravan that you see here, it has some wood, but it has a lot of clay, and all those Bhuja Kridas are all wooden. And if you know Kuthu, they are made of that. So they come from different villages in and around Kuvagam. So if you go to Kuvagam, and I had the opportunity, thankfully, before the lockdown, I don't know if Srijit has joined, both of us were there the day before the actual festival, and we saw them assembling, so there are many people who bring it together and embody this Aravan for us. And then you have this big chariot, that is the first photograph that you're seeing. And on that day, you have, in fact, this 1906 Francis manual tells you that there were many men in saris. And according to him, most of them were Vanir community, which is a predominant community in that region. And then they would tie the thali from the Pusari, who is taking care of the Aravan Kuthandavar temple. And the Pusari will tie the thali, and you get to be the bride that night. And usually, even today, that practice continues. Apart from the trans people visiting Kuvagam, you have many villagers in and around that area who, it is like an offering. Just like how you pray to God to shave your head or tonsure your head or visit a particular temple or sacrifice a goat. This is a prayer. This is an offering, and the man comes dressed in a sari to marry the best of men, which is Kutandavar or Aravan, for just one night. And that one night is supposed to have been one of the best nights because Aravan gets to experience sex with Mohini, that is Krishna, in the form of a trans woman, and transforms herself. And then Mohini sleeps with Aravan that day. And the next day, Mohini becomes a widow. So the second photograph that you have is that of the trans women. And I mean, for me, the image that you have of that, it's usually an anthill where they throw the flowers and kumkum and turmeric and their thalis. So it is kind of shrouded in that yellow thread and with flowers and everything. And then they wear their white saris and they lament. So these two, please bear it in mind. The Draupadi cult, where you have the Karagatam, and it is Karagam, we call it, which doesn't make too much noise. There is no Nadashwaram or anything to go with it. There is just the Chalanga that you wear, and you have the big Karagam on your head, and you go with it, and the lamentation that follows, the marriage and the widowhood that follows. In a way, it kind of summarizes philosophically probably an adult life, So this is the history that the trans people especially, and most of the queer people, and when I say queer, you don't have to be, it is everyone in the spectrum, including people who think that you are part of the heteronormative existence, but you are questioning it. You're questioning your existence of being in your cisgendered role, whatever the role, male or the female, the insistence on marriage, the insistence on having a child, or the wife bashing and everything that's taken for granted and normalized and everything. Now, what happens in Aravan's story is that you have both images of building a body and breaking the body. And you have the joy and the sorrow, and you have performance, which really brings it together. And you have, you're performing your life, you're performing a lot of rituals, and there are various iconic images that go with it, and the images that get really formed. So somewhere, if we are tracing it to the Draupadi cult and the Mahabharata, which gets the form of whatever number of days Kothal that you have in this region, like at least half of this Tamil Nadu, the North Arcad and South Arcad districts, we are really talking about 1600 and after. Already you have Krishnadeva's regime, you have the Hyderabad Nizams who have come in, and there is an Arcad Nawab who is very, very established. So, it will be very interesting to know, even though the myth and the story is from Mahabharata, you already have a very thriving Mughal culture. And Mughal culture was in a way really safeguarding and providing an asylum to people who don't want to really fit in, who really are questioning these things. So you have the Havelis. Yesterday I had a chance to talk with Revati, who wrote Vellaimozhi, and Revati was saying in Chennai, now they talk about Padanettu Veedu, so there are clans of trans people. But she said earlier it would be your Bade Haveli and the Chote Haveli. So you have two major Havelis. And the word as Haveli, as you know, comes from an Islamic word. So we are really talking about at least 500 years of performative aspects of queer performances. But I would take it a little bit further, and we have Priya Babu, who is another trans woman activist from Madurai, who has been writing about references in literature, references in sculptures in the temples and everything. So you do have references to Pedikut. It's called Pedikut, and one of the kutus that Madhavi danced is referred to as Pedikut. And Manimegale also has references to Pedikut, a big procession where there is somebody who is dancing the Pedi dance that we are talking about. And within whatever exists of the Mahabharata Kutu now, we also have the story of Arjuna serving as the dance teacher in Kichaka's court and taking on the form of a woman who is a dance teacher, not necessarily claiming trans identity, but then an effeminate identity, an identity. Okay, is my voice very feeble? Jyoti, my network.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Okay, sorry about it. And yeah, usually it helps if you can log out and come back again. That's another way to do it if you have fluctuations. So Alf Hilterbetel is talking about all these things. I think I met him when he was here on fieldwork in 1982, and then he came back again in 1990. So all his works, articles, journals, and books are published based on whatever he saw in the 1980s. And even though the 1906 manual does not refer to trans people visiting these temples, Al already talks about, but he of course calls them Ali, which was considered a derogatory word, and all those changes come much later in the last 30 years or so. But then earlier, that is what happened. What I want to really share with you is a small clip from one of the plays that we did in Bangalore. I wanted to show you a 6-minute clip. I think I'm going to edit it now because of time. It's called Freedom Begum, and it's written by Rumi Harish in Bangalore. Those of you who are familiar with the queer movement know Rumi quite well, who is a Hindustani singer. And I have had the privilege of directing Rumi's plays before Rumi became Rumi. From then on and now, for close to 20 years now. So what we did, it is a story of Bangalore Alsur area, and where you had a Begum who lived there, whose house, and she was originally from Hyderabad. So he brings her here as a keep to Bangalore and has this big mansion where you have a Hotel Conrad standing now, facing Alsur Lake, and then next to that there is a Sikh temple, but the bus stop is still called Begum Mahal. So this Begum Mahal was a place where people who are considered marginalized could actually find an asylum. And she literally rented out spaces for 25 rupees and 50 rupees. So all around the compound, both inside and outside, there were these small huts where people could set up shops, right? From scrap metal shops to sex workers, name it, all of them. So let me just share a very, very brief clip from Freedom Begum. Yeah, I'm just going to skip a little bit.
ವರ್ಷಕ್ಕೆ ಒಂದೇ ಸಾರ್ತಿ ಬರೋದು. ಈ ಕಡೆಯಿಂದ ಮಾರಿಯಮ್ಮ, ಆ ಕಡೆಯಿಂದ ಪಲ್ಲಕ್ಕಿ ಜಾತ್ರೆ. ಈ ಮಧ್ಯ ಬರೋ ಶಿಸ್ತು ದೇವರು ಇರ್ತಾರಲ್ಲ, ಶಿಸ್ತು ದೇವರು, ಅವ್ರನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ಪಕ್ಕಕ್ಕೆ ತಳ್ಳಿ ಬಿಟ್ಟು ನಮ್ಮ ಮಾರಿಯಮ್ಮ ಊರಿಗೆಲ್ಲ ಊಟ ಹಂಚ್ತಾಳೆ. ಬೇಕಾಗಿರೋ ಊಟ. ಇಲ್ಲಿನ ಬೆಂಕಿ, ನೀರು ನಮ್ಮುಸಿರು, ಬೆಂಕಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ನೀರು, ನೀರಲ್ಲಿ ಬೆಂಕಿ, ಉಸಿರಲ್ಲಿ ಉಸುರು, ನೆನಪಲ್ಲಿ ಮರುಳು, ಮರುಳಲ್ಲಿ ನೆನಪು. ಯಾರಿಗೆ ಬೇಕು? ಎಷ್ಟು ಬೇಕು? सस्ता सुंदर टिकाऊ ನೆನಪು सस्ता सुंदर टिकाऊ मरಳು सस्ता सुंदर टिकाऊ ನೆನಪು
ಹೇಳುತ್ತೀವ ಕೇಳಿರಿ ಹೇಳಿ 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 ಕೇಳಿ
ಬಂದ ಕಥೆಗಳ
ಹುಟ್ಟಿ ಬಂದ ಕಥೆಗಳ
ಮಣ್ಣಿನ ಮಹಲಿನ ನೀರಿನ ಬೆಂಕಿ ಹೊತ್ತ ಕಥೆಗಳ
ಮಣ್ಣಿನ ಮಹಲಿನ ನೀರಿನ ಬೆಂಕಿ ಹೊತ್ತ ಕಥೆಗಳ
ಮಣ್ಣಿನ ಮಹಲಿನ ನೀರಿನ ಬೆಂಕಿ ಹೊತ್ತ ಕಥೆಗಳ ಮಣ್ಣಿನ ಮಹಲಿನ ನೀರಿನ ಬೆಂಕಿ ಹೊತ್ತ ಕಥೆಗಳ
ನಾವು ಕೊಳಕು ಜನರು ದಂಧ ಮಾಡೋರು ಅದೂ ಅಲ್ಲ ಇದೂ ಅಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ಜನರು ನಾವು
ಗಂಡಸರಲ್ಲಿ ಹೆಣ್ಣಿನ ಭಾವನೆ ಇದ್ದವರು ಹೆಂಗಸರಲ್ಲಿ ಗಂಡಿನ ಭಾವನೆ ಇದ್ದವರು
ಕೊಳಚ ಜನರು ಪ್ರತಿ ಜನರು ತಯಾರೆಲ್ಲ ಸರಿಯಾಕಣವರು
ಚಿಕ್ಕ ಚಿಕ್ಕ ಜೀವನ ಮಾಡೋರು
ತಮಿಳು ಕನ್ನಡ ಉರ್ದು ತೆಲುಗು മലയാളം மாத்தாடவரு பொது ஜனங்களுக்கு பொது இடம் சின்னதா சொந்த இடம் ஜனங்களுக்கு கிடைக்காம இருக்குது
दुनिया की जगह में हमारा अपना खास जगह
ನಮ್ಮೆಲ್ಲರ ಮಧ್ಯೆ
ನಮ್ಮ ಸ್ವಂತ ಜಾಗ ಮಾಜಾವನು
ನಮ್ಮೊಳಗೆ. ನಿಮ್ಮಂತಸ್ತಿಗೆ ಇತಿಹಾಸಕ್ಕೆ ಕಾಣಿಸೋರಲ್ಲ
ನಿಮ್ಮ ಅಗಸಗೆ, ಇತಿಹಾಸಕ್ಕೆ ಕಾಣಿಸೋರಲ್ಲ.
Okay. So I think for me, this Karagam, which is associated with Draupadi temple, and there is reflection. She is the daughter of fire. So it is fire, it is water, the Karagam that people carry, the Opari that is almost part of their lives, and the food. Because this whole Beha Mahal was important because there was food that is available. So that's going to be my thread connecting the things that I really want to say. Because I think like in any other country, and like I began the whole thing, the queer people, because they did not fall within what was considered to be normal and legitimate and everything, face a lot of aspersions, not from anybody outside. It begins at home. So the so-called family and home becomes a bit of a huge prison of sorts, you know. So I think all of us go through that. You know, we don't have a very smooth family structures to really speak of, and I don't think it is possible either, as long as we have this view about generation gap and young and old, and the respect for the old and falling at their feet, you know, in that sense. So hierarchic the whole thing is. So what happens is when they have to leave the home, it is begging, and they call it badai. So it is actually kada keka, you know. So they don't really call it badai. And one of the trans women authors, Living Smile Vidya, actually explained. She said, "Nanga ungalta picha kekla. We are not asking you to give us charity. We are levying a fine for making us into beggars to the common society, to the civil society." And I think that is what is symbolized by the clap that really kind of encapsulates the identity of the trans people, you know. So, but then it is begging, and there is sex work, of course, and there is a lot of dancing. So most of these people, when they are young and they are at home, I mean, you talk to Nartagi, who is now at the helm of affairs, and you know, one of the ways by which she could kind of express her identity was by growing hair, you know. And why are you growing your hair? To dance at the school function or something, you know. So I mean, it was a time, remember, when boys having long hair was not considered fashionable. So even now, I don't think it is. Parents are very, very sticky, you know, unless you have a lockdown and the salons are not open, and you don't know to cut your child's hair. So what happens is that, but what I want to really point out, even in begging, it's not all on Sunday. You know, there is a method in what you think is people standing on the streets. For example, in North Madras, you have a group of trans women who do their badai during full moon or new moon days when the fishermen go into the sea for the catamaran, and they can probably earn anywhere between 5,000 to 10,000 on a single day badai by doing that. So what happens is this begging that we are talking about is actually integral to the community. So those of us who are seeing them only at traffic signals or fighting among themselves or lifting up the sari, you should understand how they, in their real lives, what are they really doing? So they may have the train, they may cover the train from morning 5 o'clock to 10 o'clock. So there is a fixed kind of system by which they allocate, they don't fight, they don't enter into another person's territory. It's a livelihood that one is really talking about. And within Chennai, as usual, the South Madras, temple-based, Tambram, dominant kind of, actually South Madras is not Tambram. We have the best of churches and mosques in this area, except that we forget that. But the other side of the Basin Bridge that we are talking about. So Basin Bridge, which is still the cruising area for sex workers and other people, or to find your partner and all that, that's also where you pay a lot of things to the policemen, especially towards the end of the month. So all that happens, which is where most of the runaway young boys meet their peers, meet their community people, which is where they meet, they go there, and they are groomed into this system of living. That idea that, if a boy comes or they kidnap young boys and make them into trans people, which is a fear that most families have, most young men have, especially when the trans people come and touch you, bless you on your head when you're in a train or something, doesn't really happen. Not then, not now. Now there is actually civic bodies where you have drop-in houses, where you have halfway homes where they can stay for a while safely and securely, So they really take care and provide a kinship that the natal family refused to give. So they take them under the wing. So all the, whether it be dancing, whether it be cooking or begging or even sex work, I think they're not just left in the lurch. It is not like the way trafficking happens with young girls, for that matter. So here you do have an elderly person who will guide you. There is the Jamaat system, which nowhere else exists in the whole world. The Bombay and the Delhi Jamaats work differently, but in Chennai, you really don't have that level of, Jamaats still have a value, and I think they are valuable because they are traditional apparatuses that came into this society. We don't know how long. So they tell you stories of trans women who died in her 100, who lived up to 90 and stuff. They tell you stories of trans women who moved from Kerala and are settled in Coimbatore and they make biryani. So there are traditions within which are yet to be unearthed, which are yet to be documented. But what we really know is, at least the north of Chennai, whether it be the slums or the fishing villages, the trans people were part of those living, which is also one of the reasons that some of the films which really depict them in that context give them some dignity. One of my most favorite is one of the oldest films of Mani Ratnam, not now, no Navarasa for me, the Bombay film, where it was a trans woman who would give some kind of protection to those young little boys during the riot. She was the only one who could come out and take the kids, So I think that is the kind of image that they have among them. And it was done for those of us who are particular about names and organizations and mission statement and vision statements, all the NGO lingo that we are all familiar with. I think we had one of our earliest organizations of the queer community, Sahodaran, some 30 odd years ago, which was all rolled into one. So it gave asylum, it gave training, it gave awareness, it also gave them medical help. For a long time, Sahodaran was probably, it still remains one of the major sources of support to the community. And they have also kind of branched out into Tori, Snehidi, Toran, all of which taking on different kind of assignments. From the state, what we had, and the state, I think, woke up to this whole fact in the 90s. So somewhere in the mid 80s, when HIV was identified, HIV positive was identified, and in India, the first to be identified were the sex workers from Tamil Nadu, who were rescued from Bombay and were brought here. And then, of course, the next category where HIV was identified were monogamously married middle-class women. And where did they get from? From all these men who loiter around, who did not even know the source of what HIV was. So there were a lot of programs that were there, which is what I remember as somebody who was in my 20s at that time. And then, of course, in 93, we have the Tamil Nadu government forming the State AIDS Control Society. And that became a place where we had peer educators, community members who trained themselves into community leaders. So or name it, all the people that we are familiar with, whether it is Aruna, Asha Bharati, Sudha, Tai Sudha, many people, all of them were part of the TANSAC that we are talking about. But then Tamil Nadu government and Karnataka government, which has given 1% reservation for government jobs now this year in a judgment, they were open, So even though the NALSA case and the court hearings and the High Court challenging of the Section 377 happened in Delhi, a lot of work was done in Bangalore and Chennai. Bangalore primarily, so you had people who were part of the civil rights movement. So some of the primary things were the cultural understanding of what is queering in order to support the legal battle. So they were all brought in one together, which is why, if you ask me what am I, a theater person, doing in this crowd, that is what I'm doing. I'm doing cultural work, which is the only work that I know to do. But then you work in tandem, in cooperation with the legal battles that are being waged, with the medical treatments and the understanding and awareness that you need to give to this very, very educated doctors who still think it is gender disorder that we are dealing with. And the textbook is also saying that, by the way, so we need to rewrite the textbooks first and then make them aware. So all these were big battles in the 90s. And the cultural work started almost around then, even though one of the earliest groups that we could form was in 2002. 2002, we began the work. 2003, we could form Kannadi Collective. And the name itself, as they gave themselves, Priya Babu, Vasanti, they were all part of this early group that formed. And we were talking about getting them ID cards to the then queen of the state, Jayalalitha. So we were asking, these are people whose school certificate still has the boy's name, but then they have transitioned now and they are women and we need ID cards. So from then on started the whole movement for ration card, banks, self-help groups, all those things that really started building up, and today you have central government, which has also passed a law, which most of us are not happy with. And but then the first one to proposed the amendment in the parliament was Tiruchi Shiva, which did not come through at that time. And like many other present governments, central government's way of executing the law into executing the bills, the trans bill also came about, and the trans community waged a big war against that. But what is crucial in Tamil Nadu, which happened about, I think, 2014 or 15, was naming of the pride. And it started in Chennai. There were a lot of heated debate back and forth. But then I think in Tamil Nadu, we wanted to name it. And the call again came from within the community, both gay, trans, lesbian, by the groups, which said, in this soil, what does pride mean? Pride means Suya Maryada. Pride means self-respect. And we have this old man, Tata, who gave us that. So we are going to call the Pride March as Suya Maryadai Perimida Peru. So which was at one go questioning caste hierarchy, class hierarchy, and gender hierarchy. And we still call it that. I mean, today it is very, very normal. I mean, I'll put it in quotes. I think it's a bad word for me, but for everyone to understand, it is a Suya Maryadai Perimida Perani that we are holding in June each month, when we hold the Pride marches, which I think is one of the best that Tamil Nadu has to offer, which began in Chennai. Another thing that really happened in Chennai is this idea of intersectionality. How do you really work with other people? Yes, we needed the queer movement. I mean, even today, if you go to many other parts of the country, I feel what you really think is inclusivity is not really inclusive after all. So, and which is a problem that all of us will face, and we need to wade through it. There is no way that you can bypass that and come. So you need to really face the brunt. People will ask you, what are you doing here? This English educated, obscenely long time married, homogeneous, heterosexual woman who is a mother of two, what are you doing here? And you need to answer it by your life. You need to take that question. Now, what the trans people did was to bring in their own culture. I mean, Opari is there as a form everywhere. And today, Opari Poratam is very, very common as part of Tamil Nadu modes of struggle that we are having. But one of the earliest struggles that we had by the trans community in support of the Sri Lankan war, the final war in 2009, was the Marathon Opari Poratam that they did on Merit. And they went back to it during the Thoothukudi fire. So here is a community with all that we are asking is, let us bury the dead with dignity. That's all. And I think we are living at a time when that is becoming more and more difficult, which is why the Ganges becomes the bed for many dead bodies. We saw how Delhi had burial ghats in parking lots. So, yeah, it is a difficult time. I just want to end with what happened in Chennai and many different parts of the body, Tamil Nadu in pockets, was how the trans community geared itself up. This time, not as the receiver, but as somebody who is a giver, who is a provider, who could actually be the protector. And for me, it is the Freedom Begum spirit that is behind that. So in Chennai, what I want to share with you is a trans kitchen that was run in two places in Chennai, one in Porur and one in North Madras, which really fed the hospitals, the platform dwellers during the lockdown in the second wave.
நாங்கள் எங்களுக்கு தெரிஞ்ச எங்கள் சர்க்கிளில் இருக்கிற மிகவும் ஏழைப்பட்ட குடும்பத்துக்கு நாங்களுக்கெல்லாம் அதிலேருந்து நாங்கள் கொஞ்சம் 2020 கொரோனாவால் எல்லா உலகமே பாதிக்கப்பட்டது. அதில் நாங்கள் ரொம்ப ரொம்ப பாதிக்கப்பட்டோம். ஏன்னா எங்களுக்கு இருக்கிற பிரதான தொழிலாக பார்த்தீங்கன்னா பாலியல் தொழில் செய்கிறதோ இல்லை கடைக்கடையாக போய் காசு கேட்குறதோ. முழு ஊரடங்கு போட்டதால் கடைக்கடையாக போய் காசு கேட்குறதும் பாதிக்கப்பட்டது, பாலியல் தொழிலும் பாதிக்கப்பட்டது. அதனால நாங்கள் சாப்பாட்டுக்கே கஷ்டப்படுற சூழ்நிலை வந்துச்சு. அப்போ எங்களுக்கு எல்லாருமே இந்த மாதிரி மளிகை பொருள்லாம் கொடுத்து உதவும் போது எங்களுக்கு அதிலேருந்து நாங்கள் எங்களுக்கு தெரிஞ்ச எங்கள் சர்க்கிளில் இருக்கிற மிகவும் ஏழைப்பட்ட குடும்பத்துக்கு நாங்களுக்கெல்லாம் அதிலேருந்து நாங்கள் கொஞ்சம் கொடுத்தோம்.
அந்த சாப்பாடால் ஒரு சிலர் இறந்து போனது வந்து மிகவும் நான் மட்டும் இல்லை, என்னுடைய திருநங்கைகள் நண்பர்களையும் அதிகமாக பாதிச்சது. ஸோ அப்படி தான் நாங்கள் யோசித்தோம், சரி நம்ம இந்த திருநர் கிச்சனை உருவாக்கணும் அப்படின்ற மாதிரி நாங்கள் பிளான் பண்ணோம்.
நாங்கள் ஏற்கனவே திருநங்கைகள்லாம் சமையலில் ரொம்ப ஆர்வமாக இருப்போம். சின்ன வயசுலேருந்தே எங்களுக்கு அந்த சமையல் கற்றுக்கணும், சமையலில் ஈடுபடணும் அப்படின்றது ரொம்ப ஆசை. இப்போ நாங்கள் நிறைய சமைச்சிட்டு இருக்கோம். நிறைய ஆர்டர்லாம் வெளியே வந்தால் அந்த மாதிரி சமைச்சு கொடுப்போம். நான்வெஜ்ஜு வெஜ்ஜு எல்லாமே சமைச்சு கொடுப்போம்.
ஒரு நெருடலோடு தான் நாங்கள் ஸ்டார்ட் பண்ணோம். எப்படி இருக்குமோ எதாக இருக்குமோ, ஏன்னா நம்ம கம்யூனிட்டிக்குள்ளேயே தானே இது வரையிலும் நம்ம சுற்றி சக்கரம் அடிச்சிட்ருக்கோம். அதனால் இப்போ நான் கம்யூனிட்டியை போய் புதுசாக சந்திக்க போகிறோம் போது இது நாங்கள் கொஞ்சம் வருடலோட ட்ரையல்லாம் பார்த்து அதுக்கப்புறம் அது ட்ரையல்லையே எங்களுக்கு 100% சக்ஸஸ் கிடைச்ச பிறகு தான் நாங்கள் இதில் இறங்கணும். மனசுக்கு ரொம்பவே நிறைவான ஒரு சந்தோஷமாக இருந்தது.
I mean, for me, in fact, this trans kitchen in Chennai called the whole project Oru Pidi Anbu, a fistful of love. And I mean, it is a line taken from a Sri Lankan poet, Vilvaratnam. Thank you so much, Srinivas. So you know that for the first time, the trans people who have been in the margins of the society could actually feel that they don't have to be always the receivers. And in my view, they have never been the receivers alone, ever. So now there are a lot of inways that are being done. There are also a lot of problems. I mean, we still have medical surgery gone wrong. We still have suicides one after another at the prime of their youth, when we think that they have made it, they have crossed the hurdles. But then, I mean, life is too much with you, and every time that happens, it jolts you, it kind of troubles you. But I guess I just want to end with what Rumi said in the Freedom Begum. This is a history that you can look only if you want to look. So it is your heart that should be ready to look. With that, I'll stop. I'm sorry I exceeded my planned time, but I'll take questions. We can spill over by 5-10 minutes, I guess. Thank you.
I have a question, Mangai. Can I ask? Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. I'm sorry if I am asking this question, not to hurt anybody, with all humility for queers and other trans people. I'm asking this question. My question is arisen out of my ignorance, maybe, and my problem with finding the equivalence. I mean, the right translation. All the while, while I was listening to your lecture, I thought queer is one of the categories in LGBT. If that is so, what is the difference between queer and what we call in Tamil Tirunangai? And you also mentioned Opari singers are Tirunangaigal. It is their song. Do I understand that Rudalis in North India are also transgender invariably? Thank you.
Thank you, Ajit. Let me just correct myself if you have got it. Opari is there in different contexts, in different places, sung primarily by women, identified by women. You know, the men do the parayatam, you dance, and the women actually do the opari. So that is something that is in existence, I think, in various communities, usually identified with women. But the Tirunangais take it up and give it another meaning, because even when they do the opari in Kuvagam, it is that one spending one night as a bride and immediately doing it is a ritualistic crying. You know, it is a ritualistic crying. So opari becomes performative even in Kuvagam, and they extend the meaning into Ira Tamilar Tamil Sri Lankan Tamil struggle, or the Thoothukudi firing. So that's what I meant. So it has nothing to do with all opari singers being trans or anything. I'm glad you brought up the word translation problem. In
I'm
fact,
really confused. I'm really.
in my writing, I would still prefer to use the word queer. I will write ikviyir
I see.
rather than using Pal Pudumayar, which is a term that everybody is using. But I have big questions about that, you know. I mean, because when there was a big debate among the trans people about are they the third gender, then they said, so you think you are all first and second, and we are the third gender, you know. So Moondram Palinam, they were not ready to really accept that. And even Tirunangai, initially we called them Aravani. In my own writing, we had used Aravani, which they disowned later because it immediately connects to Aravan and Hinduism and everything. And they wanted a more secular term, which became Tirunangai. In fact, accidentally dropped by Nartagi, which became, everybody took it. So we call Tirunangai, Tirunambi, everything. But then queer is an umbrella term, within which you would classify them into L or G or B or T or, you know, LGBTQIA now plus.
Yeah, AI is also there.
Yeah.
But using it as an umbrella term.
Process of evolving specific terms for all that. Now, I am not a language purist, and we are still struggling. But if you use the word, I would still work with them. I mean, I don't know, Shiva is not here, but Nirangal Shiva, we had to find a word for intersex. And I remember bringing up one, you know, because intersex is, you can be an intersex and you may choose to identify as masculine gender or feminine gender. So you need to find a word with, if you're using Naduvin, you know, intersex, you need to kind of add it with something, you know, to denote your Anmai or Penmai, whatever gender category that you want to really identify yourself with. And also this understanding of differentiating gender and sexuality becomes a big issue, because vis-a-vis lesbian and gay, it is the sexuality that we are referring to, not necessarily the gender, you know. But in some cases they may overlap. So you can have a trans masculine person having a gay partner, a cisgendered gay partner. So that might happen. So I think that, at least in our understanding, that distinction should be there. If it is not there, I mean, I'm saying this because I can see some of the people who are familiar with this lingo and the movements who are here, because only if we have this critical understanding, we can question, let's say, a patriarchal macho attitude of a trans man, let's say. Yes, he's a Tirunambi. And the Tirunambis role models are the masculinities that are practiced elsewhere, you know. So there are bashing, there is violence among the trans, which we cannot really say no. And the same thing happens with most trans women. I usually tell them, Okay, you are a trans woman and you have a man as your partner. And where did the so-called stamina go when he's hitting you? You know, yes, you identify as a woman, but why are you taking it? I mean, even women, I don't think are holding back because they can't hit back. It is because you are given those, dinned into those brainwashing lessons that a woman should be so-called womanly, you know. I mean, I'm sure we know where to hit and how to kill. No, ours is a society which has a Kundala case. So we can kill, we can come from behind the back and push you off the cliff. You know, it's not that we can't do it, but I mean, let's not get into the violent talk. But I'm just saying that this idea of the masculinity and femininity, we need to understand it in a spectrum, in a kind of swing, you know, which is when we can really kind of accommodate the gender plural people who really don't want to be boxed, you know, and this box itself is something that we invented. I mean, I'm saying we because we are all implicated in that. We built those blocks for the benefit of the patriarchal, feudal, heteronormative system, which is why queer is better, you know. And queer is also a word from feminism, mind you. It's like slut walk. It is like pink jatti campaign, you know. So what we are doing is appropriating the things that you pushed aside into the dustbin and say, no, it is mine. I'm happy with it, you know. So you shut your, yeah. That's why. That's for that question. I mean, this is something that both within the community and outside and within the academia we are discussing. And I also feel the necessity to talk about it in forums where we speak in English, because I think there is a way the West has built a queer studies. If you notice their lingo, you will find a lot of trans masculine narratives there. Very few on trans feminine narratives. You know, that are on Netflix. I mean, it is one of those soaps. There is a series called Pose, P-O-S-E, which is historical. It is not a documentary, it is fictional, but really tells you the trans history in the US, you know, and the HIV thing and everything. And you will see how difficult it is for a trans feminine there, for a Tirunangai there. Whereas in India, it is the reverse. It is the trans feminine community.
That is why I was getting confused when you used this word queer with the feminine part, because Aravan history, Tamil, I'm also from Tamil Nadu. I'm so glad that there is something called Kuthandavar cult. When you're using this one, because I'm so influenced by the Western thought of queer, and you're giving a feminine flavor to it, that's why I got confused. I'm happy that you gave a different interpretation to this queer, and using it as an umbrella term got me slightly foxed. An entirely different interpretation that you have given. Thank you very much for that. That's why I asked you, how do you define this word? Is it Aravanigal or Tirunangaigal? All feminine terms, not the Tirunambi. I thought queer is always the trans masculine, which is not so according to you. No.
Not at all. Not at all. It is neither masculine, it is neither feminine.
Okay.
Nor feminine.
No, because you started with the feminine god, the masculine god Aravan, and went to the feminine aspect of.
See, Aravan is the ideal masculine, the myth of the ideal masculine, you know. So, it is actually telling you that it is an impossibility. You know.
Okay. I got that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for the clarification.
Are there any questions, Lakshmi?
In the chat as such, no. If someone has a question, feel free to unmute and ask.
Yeah, please unmute and speak, and I think we can take 2 or 3 more questions or comments.
Good noon, ma'am.
Yes.
I hope I'm audible.
Yes.
I'm Deepak from Kerala. So thanks to you for having kind of like taken us through the history of like especially the trans like life, I would say, over the years, from a very cultural context to the modern day scenario in a very short span of time. So, and also I would say we from Kerala always look up to Tamil Nadu for the fact that every now and then they come up with a new word for each identity. And so we are always at awe. And we always think, how do they come up with this? Do they have a committee or something who decides, okay, now we have a new identity. Okay, let this be the name. So now I understand there's a lot of work that's going into it, a lot of thought and a lot of energy spent on that. Anyway, like now I have to, like, I think if time permits, I would like pose 3 questions, very brief ones. The first one, which I thought, or which came to my mind when going through your like presentation, the first, like even like the performance that you had screened. So I was just trying to think or connect. I was like wondering, to put it simply, if the existence of like gods who are worshipped, like Peshi Amman and Muttumari Amman in Tamil Nadu, whom I think are queer gods, for the fact that they are at odds with the normal, the legitimate, the dominant gods that are worshipped in Tamil Nadu and elsewhere. So is it because, like, is it the existence of such gods which could be like accepted by the Tamil community that made it rather easy or like made it more approachable for these communities, like for the community members to establish themselves? I don't know if I could use the word establish themselves, to visibilize themselves easily. I'm not saying it was a cakewalk, but I'm saying like when compared to other states like Kerala and other parts of India, in Bangalore and Tamil Nadu, and yes, of course, in Mumbai and Delhi, that's where we find these things coming up. Like even as you have referred, from Kerala, we used to migrate to such places. So is it, does this have any kind of relationship? So that's my first concern.
One by one, Deepak. Can I do one by one? I'm sorry
Yeah,
to
sure,
break
sure,
your
sure.
flow.
Okay.
Because I'll forget. I don't know. I just have a one-line answer. I think, I mean, of course, like I said, we did have a Periyar, and subversion kind of becomes normative almost. So that is the overall conceptual thing. Another thing I think is compared to Kerala, and I would include Bengal, the 2 major whatever left-wing cottage industries and whatever. So I think whether in Tamil Nadu, at least in Tamil Nadu, they are very overtly patriarchal and violent. Whereas I think in Kerala, it is a lot more sophisticated and paternalistic, which is very difficult to walk out of. It's very difficult to see, first of all. See it as something that is abusive, you know, and I think which is why you had that amazing film, that kitchen film, Great Indian Kitchen. Yeah, you can be lovey and be violent, you know, whereas here you get the bashing, so you fight back. It's very simple.
Okay, fine. So you do not associate the existence of such gods and goddesses being worshipped there?
I don't.
Okay, fine.
I mean, you need to be a Jungian to do it.
Okay, fine. So my second question would be, I'm a little concerned about the use of the word Swayam Maryade. I would like to take it back to the history of the word Swayam Maryade when like Periyar calls the marriage system there, Swayam Maryade Thirumanam. And then what has happened over the years to that, wherein like recent studies, I think there are many studies, wherein it speaks about how that had been a space where party members used to like take money from these people. So dowry and all those things were like set aside, but the other things were happening. So such studies have come up in Tamil Nadu itself. So I've been reading something of late. So I was just wondering if, yeah, I am very much in for the idea that self-respect is very important, and that name is like very apt. But I was just wondering how far the naming, the idea, the act of naming a pride event as Swayam Maryade helped the community at large. And what is its standing? Because in Tamil Nadu, you understand Swayam Maryade. But when you go out of Tamil Nadu, there is definitely the question, okay, it's a pride. So that's how we call it. That's how I understand. Or do you use the same word to call Tamil Nadu pride elsewhere too, or to refer to Tamil Nadu pride elsewhere too? So that's my second question.
When you speak in English about it, you will say pride. Chennai pride, Madurai pride, Coimbatore pride. That's a different issue. But I think within Tamil Nadu, the moment you use that word, I agree with you with all the critical. I mean, we have had dilutions and dilutions of Periyar. But still, the idea of the Dravidian is a threat. And we like to be a threat. Idea of Tamil is a threat. Why do you think? I mean, if it is threatening the right wing, I think we should just keep it.
So that is political.
Yeah. So
That's what I wanted to know.
And simultaneously, it is also bringing in a critique of caste, religion, hierarchy within the movement. So they can't really kind of flaunt their caste, and and not, of course they give up everything to form this new life, but still caste kind of sticks to you in some form. So the moment you use self-respect, I think you are able to question that. So for that, I think we will still retain that, and it's usually used within Tamil Nadu when you write in Tamil. Swayamariyadai Perimida Perani, but I think it's very, very important. Yeah. Can somebody else ask question? Deepak will continue if they have any, because we are running out of time, and Lakshmi will just stop me.
Anybody else having questions? Please feel free to unmute and ask your questions.
No?
Yeah.
Okay, Deepak, last word.
Okay, my last question. I was just thinking about the right wing's disinterest in this, the idea of pride and the idea of the queer. Okay, I would also relate it to, there are many reasons as we have been discussing. I would also like to relate it to the idea of queer having, or especially the trans having been related to the Mughal and the, because many of the terminologies come from there. So, and that is one of the reasons why Lakshmi Tripathi in Delhi, she took it to the level of like orangizing the whole thing. And she herself, like she's a good friend of mine. So she herself has like said that it is important. In the present context, it is important. So I was just like, my thought was, isn't it a little bit dangerous to still associate religion and practices with the community? There is no go. When we speak about the history, we still speak about these cultural performances which has religious overtones, especially the Kuagam festival and many other festivals that we know of. So how can we come, needn't we come out of it? If so, how can we come out of it? Because queer identities, be it any identity, not just the trans identity, they need to find a space and existence like the normal community, normal within quotes. So how will they associate? Because we still try to pin them down as, okay, these cultural performers, or people who beg and who do sex work. Yeah.
I mean, I used to be some 10, 15 years ago. I used to think the only way to be secular is to not talk religion. But I'm rethinking that of late, because just like how you asked your question about Mariamma and others collectively and getting into your unconscious, I think we need to first of all accept that just as how caste is shaping us, there are ways in which religion takes you, there are ways in which your food shapes you, your way of dressing shapes you. So, and I think it lives on for, I mean, look at Kamala Harris. She still has that little trace of Kumbakonam Tamil Brahmin, no? I mean, she's so far removed. So there's a way in which it does stick with you. So I think the only way to do is to keep talking about them and engaging with them critically. So I seriously don't think that is there a way to come out? No. Yeah. Yes, Srinivas.
Yeah, I'd just like to say something regarding this. Many of the cultural practices that Mangai Madam was talking about, they're all, if you see, they're not really the mainstream Brahminical practices. They're all symbols of resistance. Kuvagam is, I wouldn't say it's a very mainstream Brahminical cultural system that is there. So a lot of the cultural engagements that the trans community do, they're all linked to symbols of resistance. So we need to have symbols of resistance within the system as well, because not everyone can afford to come out of the system, and it's not a privilege that's available for everybody. So some people would like to work on the system by staying inside the system, but it matters as to how you work while you're remaining inside the system. Someone like Lakshmi Narayan Tripathi is attempting to link Brahmanism in a very substantial way, and she wants to, so she wants to really Brahminize the movement and make it a saffron movement. But I wouldn't say something like Kuvagam is saffronizing it at all, because it isn't of that nature. That is one thing that I wanted to say. And the second thing is, I mean, it's for a lot of queer people, I think for the majority of queer people, there's always the need to, to also to fit in, but also to stand out. It's a very contrasting two things that are there. So we want to fit in. I mean, we want to be accepted, but we also don't want to like just be there and not question anything and just be like everyone else. So I think queer people need to be provided that cushion and that consideration that we're trying our best, like, be into the mainstream, but also like not succumb to these oppressive practices, and we're trying to question all of this every day.
Thank you. I think that says it all. Thank you so much. I'm really, really happy. Yeah.
Yes.
Lakshmi, can we finish?
Yeah, with that, thank you so much, ma'am, for the session. It is really, at every instance, it goes back to how layered there is layering in through politics, through caste, through representation, through identity, and through performance, and there is linkage across all, and it's not just one size fits all. It's a lot of thoughts, and thank you so much. It just sits in our mind, and thank you for the two previous plays, like for the Ballet Murray here during the Lang Fest, and I got a chance to, someone was saying the Freedom Begum as well. So thank you for helping us have the communication, conversations, and also here for all of you for joining us. And when I approached Mangai ma'am, the idea was to have a 20-minute pre-recorded session, and she was like, no, we need to have a live session with interaction. And I really understand why you were saying that, and thank you. The questions was really nice and thought-provoking. And we'll continue to have these spaces. potentially safe spaces and take it forward. With this, we at Dakshin Chitra, if all of you are aware about Dakshin Chitra, we are a museum set at ECR. We have representations of architecture, and through that we connect with heritage, tangible and intangible, through performing arts, visual arts, contemporary, traditional folk. We have our hands across many things. So anybody who's interested can reach out to me for more collaborations or anything that we can work on. And Madras Day, we wanted to have this conversation because the history of the history of the city comes through its people and people through their experiences. And once again, thank you so much. And yes, yeah, I can stop with you. Yeah.